Well, good morning. I'd like you to start doing today the warm up. So go ahead and pause the video. This is a good review for what we've covered so far. Okay? All right. So for number one, what decimal and simplified fraction of the sales were for peanut butter? So peanut butter is 8%. Okay, now percent is out of 100, right? So as a fraction, this would be 8 out of 100. Now it says to simplify it. So if I need to simplify it, it's even. So I can at least cut it in half, which would give me 4 over 50. But it's even again, so I can cut it in half one more time, and I get 2 out of 25. Okay, so that is the answer as a fraction in simplest form. But it also asks, what is it as a decimal? So think about how you say 8/100ths, how would you write that? So 8/100ths needs to be in the hundredths place, right? So it'd be 0 point, this is the tenths, this is the hundredths, so 8/100ths, so this would be a 0. So this is what it looks like as a decimal. Okay, second one, write the shaded area as a fraction, decimal, and percent. So first you want to do is start out with probably a fraction, okay? So you count how many are shaded to the total, which is pretty much a part to a whole. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. So I have 17 shaded out of 20, okay? I want to write that as a decimal and as a percent. Now, I'm going to show one way to do it as a decimal, which is how do you change a fraction to a decimal? You can divide. So you put 17 here, 20 on the outside. Doesn't work. So it is going to be less than 1. So think about it. If you got a 17 out of 20 on your test, that's a pretty good grade. So let's prove it. Add a decimal, raise it up, add a 0. How many 20s go in 170? That would be 8. So you're at 0.8, so 80% range. That's 160, which gives me 10. But then I have a remainder, so I add a 0, bring it down, and that's 5. So as a decimal, it's 0.85. And so what is it as a percent? Percent is out of 100. So it would be 85/100ths, right? That's how you say it, which is 85%. Or you can think about, Mr. Henry also mentioned about moving it 2 spaces to the right, and that also would give your answer. However, I have kids in the past saying, Miss Edwards, wait, I could have did it a different way at the beginning. Well, I could see that, I know that 17 out of 20, 20 can quickly go to 100 by multiplying by 5. So if I do 17 times 5, I get 85/100ths, which is 85%. Is that okay to do it that way? Absolutely. The only other difference is you would just have to then convert it into a decimal, which if you know how to you know how to write 85/100ths, which would be 0.84. Okay. Next one says shade in the percent of the model. So it also says to write it as a decimal and as a fraction. So first thing we talked about earlier this week is figuring out what each of those blocks represents, each little section. So think of this as 0% and this is as 100%. That's if I'm all the way over here. 50% is somewhere right here. So if this all adds up to 100%, first thing you need to do is think about how many sections there are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's 100% cut into 5 sections. That gives me 20% in each section. So this would be 20%, 20%, 20%, 20%, 20%. Now, how you know you did it right? It should add up to 100, and it does. So what do I do to shade in shade in 60%? So that's 20, 40, 60. Okay. So I write 60% as a fraction. Well, actually, you can look at what's shaded in here. You can do it two different ways. 60% as a fraction we know is 60 hundredths, right? However, you could cross out the zeros and you could simplify by cutting it in half, and you get 3 out of 5. But if you look at right here, I have 1, 2, 3 shaded in out of how many? 5. So you also could have just looked at the picture. Now, how do I write it as a decimal? So how do I write 60 hundredths or 6 tenths? This is 6 tenths. This is 60 hundredths. These are both the same. Or if you don't want to do that, you could also divide. 3 goes in, or 5 goes into 3 how many times? And again, I prove my point. There you go, 0.6. So 6 tenths. Or you have a 0 on the end. Doesn't matter, same answer. Okay? All right, so today's lesson was talking about, we're going to talk about like, oopsies, apparently just like skipped a bunch of stuff. Putting stuff into order, comparing it, which one is greater, which one is least, putting them in order and things like that. And the biggest thing I think is most important is either make them into all the same kind of form. So like either you make them all into decimals, all into percents, all into fractions. Personally, I don't like fractions. I'd rather work with decimals. But again, I'm going to show you both ways so you can figure out what works best for you. So how to compare, you can divide. But you also can make what's called, you can have a common, this is one way, divide, make it into a decimal, or you can have a common denominator. Okay. Personally, for me, I like to make this into decimals. And again, I'm going to show you two ways. Okay, number one is making them have the same denominator, so common denominator. Does it have to be the least? It does not. So one of the ways you learned last year, in order for me to compare it properly, is you have to have the same base or your same denominator. So I could do 12 times 8, which is 96. And then this one would be also something out of 96. How did I get that? Because 12 times 8 is 96. Okay, so how do I go from 8 to 96? I multiply by 12. So 7 times 12 is 84. I could do that over here. How do I go from 12 to 96 times 8? So 5 times 8 is 40. So which one is greater? Since they have the same base, 84 is bigger than 40. So I do 2 dots versus 1 dot. This one has 2 versus 1. So 5/12 is less than 7/8. By the way, we call this an inequality. These symbols right here, less than, greater than, or equal to, are what we call inequalities. Okay? That's one way to do it. If you like that, that's great. Honestly, I kind of knew that this one was smaller because 6 is half of 12, and this is less than 12, and this is almost a full amount for 7/8. So clearly one is a little bit bigger than the other. The other option you could have chose to do is made it into decimals. So way number 2 is take 5/12 and make it into a decimal. So you put 5 here, 12 out here, it doesn't work, add a decimal, raise it up, add a 0. And that would be 4, which is 48. 2 left over, add a 0, bring it down. And that would be 1, which is 12. And then we would have 8 left over, add a 0, bring it down. And then that would be 7? No, 6. 6, which is 72. And then I have an 8 again. So then this would be 80. And then this would be keep on going with 6. So how do I write that? That would be 0.416, but only the 6 is repeating. Okay, and then the other one is changing the other 7/8 into a decimal. So if I change 7/8 into a decimal, so 7.5, 8 on the outside doesn't work. Add a decimal, raise it up, add a 0. We're actually gonna have to add 3 zeros, by the way. 8 goes into 70. 8 times, which is 64, 6 left over, 60, 8 times 7 is 56, that's 4 left over, 40, 8 times 5 is 40, and then this decimal is 0.875. Now, this is the way I like to teach it, by comparing them both into decimals. So what you could do is, I'm looking at this one here and this one here. So they both have a 0. They both have a decimal. This is an 8. This is a 4. 4 is less than 8, so it really doesn't matter what the heck this is. It doesn't matter because they're automatically different. So which one's smaller? 4/10 is 4 is less than 8. So again, it proves my point. You can do these in decimals. Okay. All right. But also, just so you know, you can do these into percents if you really, really want to. So like, say you don't understand what I did here. So say you had the decimal 0.416 and it kept on repeating, and we had 0.875. And we wanted to compare them by percent. The rule was to move the decimal over 2 spaces because percent's out of 100. So this would be boom, boom. And this would be 41.6 repeating percent versus boom, boom, 87.5%. So if you got a 7 out of 8 on your test, that is way better than a 5 out of 12. Well, 5 out of 12 is less than half. So you could also think about it that way. Again, whatever you choose, whatever method, technically this is a third method. Am I going to show you every single way in full detail? No, I will not. Let's look at another one, just kind of get the point across here. Doing the same thing as we did over here. Okay, 2/5 versus 4/9. Now, we talked a lot about finding the common denominator. Well, actually, you did from last year. So what did I do is I just multiplied these two here. So I'm going to multiply 5 and 9. That gives me 45. And then this would be something out of 45. So how do I go from 5 to 45 times 9? So 2 times 9 is 18. That gives me my answer up here. Again, finding a common denominator. This is here to here is times 5. So 4 times 5 is 20. So which one is bigger? 4/9 is larger than 2/5. So you could do it that way. Okay. Whatever you choose, that is the way to go. So 2/5 is less than 4/9. Okay. The way I prefer it is doing option number 2, is making them into decimals. So if I take 2/5 and I make it into a decimal, 2 goes in the house, because always the numerator, no matter what it looks like. I got a 2 out of 5 on a test, I'm not doing too hot there, right? So it should be less than 50%. Add a decimal, raise it up, add a 0. Oh, it's 0.4. So this one's giving me 0.4, and then there's a bunch of zeros after this because I have no remainder. And then if I change 4/9, now I told you to remember your 9s, 4 and then 9 here. 9s, anything out of 9 has a pattern. So if you memorize this one, or like 1/9, 4/9, whatever, and you notice a pattern, you don't have to divide. So if you add a decimal, raise it up, add a 0. This is a 4, which would give you 36, and then a 40 again, and then this would be a 4 and a 4 and a 4. The difference is this ends with zeros, where this one keeps on going with 4s. So this one is 0.444, and this one has zeros after it. Now, how do we compare that? Well, they both have a 0. They both have a decimal, but they both have a 4. So I can't look at that. So now I have to look at the next number after it. After the 4 here is not a 4. This is a 0 versus a 4. Yet again, 0 is less than 4, hence why 2/5 is less than that. Now, by all means, if you wanted to change this into a percent, if you move the decimal over twice here, this is 40%. You move the decimal twice over here, this is 44.4 repeating percent. Again, you can use that to compare. But personally, I like to find the same decimal. Okay, so those are examples of showing you whether when they are both fractions. Okay, now what if they're a little different? So what if I had some here for you to practice? You can do the same thing here. So just real quick, you can do these on your own. and then I'll let you know how you did. So go ahead and pause the video, see if you got the right answer. I got 0.16 repeating, and I got 0.2, but the 7 is repeating. So if I compare, they both have a 0. This has a 1, this has a 2, so 1 is less than 2. So 1 dot, 2 dots. However, I had kids also say, oh, Miss Edwards, I can do 6 into 8. 6 times 3 is 18, and this is times 3, which is 18. Couldn't I just do 3/18 versus 5/18? Absolutely. Okay, same like with this one. Honestly, I know half is 0.5, so I don't even have to do the math there. But if I look at 7/12, what's half of 12? 6, right? This is bigger than half. So therefore, without doing any math and using common sense, this one is going to be bigger than this one, because 6 out of 12 would be half, right? But I'm bigger than half, so there you go. Again, also what you could have done, and I had kids do this, well, oh, I can make a 2 into 12, like a proportion. So like times it by 6, so times it by 6, so this would be 6/12. So 7/12 is bigger than 6/12, that's fine again. Again, you do not have to divide, but I find it easier for myself. Okay, so let's look at some that where they're like different, where one is maybe a decimal fraction, and then we're gonna compare them. So if I have 7%, okay, 7% is 7 out of 100, right? And I'm comparing it versus 7/10. So let's write this as a decimal. 700, so it would be 0.07. 7/10 is 0.7. That's how you say it, is how you write it. So which one's bigger? Well, this would have a 0 at the end, right? Because it doesn't have, it's not repeating. So they both have a 0, but this is a 0 and this is a 7. So 7% is less than 7/10. By the way, this would have been 70%, which is clearly way bigger. Okay. All right, so what about this one, 1/6? Now, we did 1/6 before, I just did it in the last problem. So when I divided 1/6, I got 0.16 and it repeated. And then this one is just 0.16, but it's not repeating. So how am I supposed to compare it? Well, we're going to do the same thing until we get something different. So they both have a 0, they both have a 1, they both have a 6. This is a 6 after that because it's repeating by the last problem I just did. But this one is not. So what's behind it? Behind it's a 0. So 6 is greater than the 0. So 1/6 is greater than 16 hundredths. By the way, if you want to make it 2%, that's fine as well. This one I find too, this one's already has a decimal, so I'm going to leave it. This one I'm just going to make into a decimal. So how do percent is out of 100, so this would be 42 hundredths. And how do I write 42 hundredths? That would be 0.42. So So I'm going to compare this one versus that one. So they both have a 0, they both have a 4. This is a 4, this is a 2. 2 is less than 4. So 42% is less than 4,400. If you want to do the same as fractions, it doesn't matter, but I tend to find decimals are a little bit quicker. Just like with this one. This is 7/10, okay? Now this one, 8/11. So I would like to write that as a decimal. Now we haven't done that one before. 8/11. Okay, so 8 in the house, 11 here, doesn't work. Add a decimal, raise it up, add a 0. That's 7, which is 77. Gives you 3 left over. Add a 0, bring it down. 2, which gives me 22. Gives me 8. Add a 0, bring it down, gives me 7. Then that would give me 30. And this would be 727272. So this one is 0.72, but both of those digits repeat. By the way, if it's anything out of 11, it'll have 2 digits repeating. Little trick there. 9s only have 1, 11s have 2. Weird, but that's how it works. Okay, so now, if I need to compare it, this is zeros. This is a 7, so I can't compare there. What's behind this 7? Well, it's not repeating, so it would be a 0. This is a 2. So this is 0 versus a 2. That's where they become different. So 7/10 is actually smaller than 8/11. So you got an 8 out of 11 on your test. What percent did you get? You got a boom, boom, about a 72.72 repeating percent, which is still a C. Not bad. Not bad. Okay, average. Okay, now, last but not least, ordering fractions from least to greatest. If you want to find a common denominator, by all means, go for it. I just don't do that. It's not what I like. It's comfortable. But I always make sure I read the directions because it's saying least to greatest. Sometimes I will ask you from greatest to least. Typically, it's least to greatest. So I have 5/6, I have 2/3, and I have 3/5. Now, I told you that the more you memorize some of these, the easier it is. So 2/3 is one of those ones you should memorize. 2/3 does become something out of 9. Because if I multiply by 3 multiplied by 3, I get 6/9. And anything out of 9 repeats, so it'd be 0.6 repeating. If you don't know how I got that, you can just do 2 divided by 3 and you would realize it is this. Okay, 3/5. Some kids go, okay, I'll divide. 3, 5 doesn't work. Add a decimal, raise it up, add a 0. By the way, we've already done this one as well in a previous example. I get 6, so 0.6, but it stops. So this one is 0.6, not repeating. And then 5/6. Now, if I got 5 out of 6 on my test, let's see. That's pretty good. So it should be kind of, hopefully, better than these numbers here. So I put 5 in the house, 6 on the outside. Now this one, it does repeat. So it doesn't work. Add a decimal, raise it up, add a 0. 6 times 7, 8, 8. Ooh, I have 80% range there. 48 as a 2, add a 0, bring it down. That's a 3. And then that would give me 18, and there's where I'm repeating. There would be 20. So the 3 is repeating here. So this would be 0.83 repeating. Okay, so we have 0.83. I have 0.6 repeating. And I just have, I'm also comparing just 0.6. Okay, now, by all means, if you want to make them into decimals or into percent, you're more than welcome to, okay? But we could use the strategy I showed you before. Honestly, if you're comparing more than 2 numbers, I think percents is a little bit easier, but again, doesn't matter. So they all have a 0, so that's not helping me out. This has an 8, which is different than this, which is different than this. So right now I'm between the bottom 2. Okay, so now I'm stuck between these 2 right now. I know this one is not part of my looking at what I'm looking at. So look here. Okay, but they both have a 6. So what's behind this 6 is a 0 because it's not repeating. This is a 6. So between these two, this is where I'm stuck at right now. This one at the bottom is the lowest. So this is why I think personally doing the percent is actually the best. Because this would be boom, boom, 60%. Boom, boom, about 66.6 repeating percent. And boom, boom, you're at 83.3 repeating percent. So again, it doesn't matter which way you do it. I just feel like once you change it to percent, you're comparing more than just two numbers. That might be easier. All you do is move the decimal over two spaces. So now it's easier to figure out the order. So which one is the least? That is your 3/5. So number one in your order would be 3/5. That's the lowest. What's your next lowest grade? That would be 2/3. Ironically, it's going, this is the second one in the order. And the last one, your highest grade you got was a 5 out of 6, which is an 83%. So just because you missed 1 point doesn't mean that it's an A or a B. You missed 1 point out of 2 out of 3, but since there's not a lot of problems, it does make a big, huge difference in missing a point. Okay, so honestly, my strategy here is to make it into a percent. Or decimal, doesn't matter, because you would have been here where this one is lower than this one, so this would be 1. And this would be 2, because you're just looking at initially these two, and then this would be 3. So again, you pick which way you feel most comfortable. Again, I like to do decimals. If you want to do decimals and percents, it does not matter to me. Okay, this is 42%. I'm going to leave this one alone. If I write 4/10 as a percent, I would move the decimal over 2 spaces. So this would be 40%. And then all I got to do is figure out what this is as a decimal and then compare it to a percent. Again, you could do decimals. If you want to do 0.42, 0.40, and then whatever the heck this one is, so I got to do this one because I don't remember this one off the top of my head. Do you think it, maybe? I don't know. It's been a while. Okay, 7 times 4 is 28. 2, add a 0, bring it down. 7 times 1, 2, 2 is 14, that's 6, 60. 7 times 8 is 56, which is 40. 7 times 5 is 35, which is 5. Add a 0. 7 times 8, no, 6. So it looks like this is kind of going on forever, but I don't need to, I can stop right there. I could have stopped after technically right here. Here's why. About what percent is this? So right now I have this crazy decimal here, but I could go boom, boom, and I'm at a 42.856%. Okay? Or I'm at a 0.42856. Eventually, by the way, it will repeat at some point. Okay? But I have enough information because I'm looking at this as this is a 42, a 42, and a 40. So which one? Now hold on. This says greatest to least. So which one is the biggest to the lowest? Now looking at this right here, 40% is my lowest. So this would be 0.4 as my lowest. Okay, then I just got to figure out which one's bigger. 3 7s or 42%. Well, they both have a 0. They both have a 4. They both have a 2. This is an 8, but this one is a 0 after. So this one right here is the largest. So it should go 3 7s as the largest, 42%. And ironically, it's in order, and 4 10ths. Again, I personally, again, think the percent is a little bit easier. So regardless, all these grades suck, but you know, you gotta put them from grades to least. I guess if you got a 3 out of 7, you did the best on any of your tests. Okay. All right. Just like the word problems are again very similar here. Zahn found that 1/5 of his class preferred vanilla ice cream. So we have Vanilla is 1/5. I'm pulling out the information. 26% prefer chocolate, so I'm going to use T for chocolate at 26%. And then 0.21 prefer strawberry. Okay? Honestly, to me, I'd make them all in percents. Okay? Why? Because I already have this one as a percent, so I'm leaving this alone as 26%. I know how to change this quickly into a percent by, this is saying 21 hundredths, which is 21%. The only one I gotta do is this one up here. Well, 1 goes in, or 5 goes into 1, doesn't work. If you got 0.2, so this would be 0.2. Let's change that into percent. Boom, boom. So this would be 20%. So vanilla is 20, chocolate is 26, strawberry is 21%. So which kind of ice cream do the students prefer the most? So which one is basically prefer the most, the highest? And so in this case, the answer would be chocolate is preferred the most at 26%. So that is the highest. So again, if you want to do all decimals, by all means, go for it. Okay, I'm not saying it's wrong. I just think sometimes percents when you're comparing more than just two numbers is a lot easier. Because two numbers is fine, but when you start looking at 17 bajillion of them, your eyes start to go, wait, where was I looking at? So just a suggestion. And then go ahead and pause the video. I want you to try this one, see if you can answer the question. It says Snickers is this amount, Twix is this amount, Milky Way is this amount, this is your calories and fat. Order these candy bars from the least amount of fat to the most amount. By the way, when I say to order them, it's the original numbers or the original like names or whatever. So make sure it says order these candy bars. So you want to make sure you're answering the right thing. So we're going from least to greatest. Okay, so go and pause the video. So let's see what you should have gotten in order. So Snickers was 20%, Twix was 22 and 2 repeating percent, and Milky Way was already given to 22%. So I made them all the percents. Lowest one, obviously, 20% is the lowest, because the other ones are 22 and some change. And then you had to just look at Milky Way and Twix. Well, Milky Way is just 22%, whereas Twix has 22% as well, but it has a little extra. So that's why Twix is the largest. But see how, again, very, very important that you use the original numbers that they give you. The original, just like I did here, where I was using here, the original. See how I use the original number, and the original number, and the original number, and apparently a random line. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense, and then I will see you tomorrow. Have a good one.